All right, good evening. My name is Scott Rogers, Chair of the Appropriations Committee. I'll call to order the Appropriations Committee meeting for November 25th at 6 p.m. This meeting is being conducted as a hybrid meeting in accordance with the provisions of the open meeting law. It's being streamed live and recorded. Because we have remote participants, all votes taken this evening will be by roll call. Before we begin, I'll state the members of the Appropriations Committee who are present in the room and those participating remotely. For the remote participants, I'll confirm that you can hear and be heard. Mona Wallace?
Here.
Terry Halloran?
Here.
George Brinkle?
Here.
And online we have Jeff Knight.
Here.
We can hear you, Jeff, and Tim Kalin may be joining us later on. Also, we have for staff, Jason Little, our finance director.
Present.
Excellent. And we will get Stephanie Bacon, our town administrator, in a little bit as well. We do offer public comment. If there's anybody who would like to offer a comment and make either here in the room or remotely, please come to the podium if you're in the room, and in the meeting, use the reactions and raise hand if you have any comments. Excellent.
I'm just here for liaison purposes.
Excellent. Yep, so we've got our liaison member from the Select Board, Jacob Jones, so thank you for coming. All right, next order of business then would be the approval of meeting minutes for September 15th. Is there a motion or any amended?
I move to.
Thank you, George. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Terry. Any further comments on the minutes? Looks good. This will be a roll call vote. Mona? To approve the minutes, just say aye.
Aye.
And Terry?
Aye.
And George?
Aye.
And Jeff? Aye. And I am also an aye. Those minutes pass. Next on our agenda was some updates surrounding White Cliffs and the special town meeting. We'll wait till Steph gets here and we'll pass over that agenda item until she can join us. And so next up is we have a request to transfer some monies out of our reserve fund in support of the Norfolk Agricultural High School. I'll turn it over to Jason for that.
Yeah, thank you. So one of this committee's role is primarily advisory, but this is the one executive function that the Appropriations Committee has, which is to manage the Appropriations Committee Reserve Fund. It's an article that appears on the warrant every year for $175,000 is what it's typically been in the past few years. And we transfer money from free cash to fund the article. The purpose of the article is for extraordinary unforeseen expenses because, and I'm saying this, I know everybody knows this here, but through Mass General Law, we can't spend more than any appropriation that's been voted by town meeting. So within the town budget, the police budget, the fire budget, the town accountant budget, we can't spend beyond those limits that are set by town meeting and voted within those articles. So I'm here before you tonight. We received, this is a little bit of a fluky situation, but the town budgets for Norfolk Agricultural High School's tuition. It's an option under what's Chapter 74 of Mass General Law that allows students to attend the agricultural high schools if your local district doesn't offer the same program and the programs are listed in Chapter 74, I believe. There's been, the past few years, a student attending Norfolk Agricultural High School, so we're responsible for paying tuition to the school. We're not a member of that district, so they send us a tuition bill. They send us a notice for the students that are going to attend in the spring, so we get usually February, we'll get a letter from the district saying how many students have applied to attend there. We communicate with the school department to make sure that they've actually enrolled there and are attending the school. The school department, we're also responsible for the transportation, so we estimate an amount to hire a van service to drive the student to transport them to school. In this case, we got notice that there's been a student that through FY25 was a senior, so we thought this expense might go away, but then we were notified that a new student had applied for the 9th grade year. So we just got our tuition bill from the school and there was 2 students attending. So It's not required by the law, but we usually get notified of the students. We didn't know there was a second student that was going to be attending, so, you know, I think within your packet, there's a notice, a copy of the notice from the district that shows the rates. So all in all, we're short about $25,000 in this appropriation, and we can't pay the tuition bill until we provide for that $25,000 deficit.
And Jason, just in terms of the overall reserves, did we have any other payments coming out of it?
No, not
So-
currently.
so
No, this is the only thing
would be
contemplated so
25
far this
against
year.
our total of 175.
Of 175, correct.
Any questions or comments on that?
So the second student was for the current year,
Yes,
started in September?
correct, yes.
Is there a way we can kind of get ahead of, you know, it's sort of like, is there a way we can kind of be more accurate in knowing how many are going there, et cetera?
Yeah, unless somebody tells us for sure before we appropriate the budget in April.
Okay.
There's not really a way to know, because I think the letter from the superintendent says that enrollments may change.
Yeah. Is there an application process, and when does that happen?
Believe it probably happens between February, and in this case, I'm sure it was between February and the end of the school year.
Okay.
So, again, we had some conversations informally with the school department that, you know, there'd be more communication around eighth graders that are going to be attending
That actually
this school.
apply, yeah.
So
Okay, 'cause it'd be better to
more
know about
awareness
this and
that
actually
we
budget
need to
for it
know
rather
to,
than-
yeah. So if this decision got made between when we completed the budget in March and the beginning of the school year, there's not much we could do about it besides come before
Okay.
this and seek a reserve fund transfer.
Right.
Sorry, the student is already enrolled, has already
Correct.
started school.
Correct, yeah. So the good news is, it's not the full amount of the tuition and that's listed in the enrollment letter. We did have some savings that's net of this in the transportation line.
Any other questions? All good? All right, is there a motion to approve the transfer? And there is, you'll see at the end of the packet, there's the,
Mr. Chairman, I move the Appropriations Committee approve the reserve fund transfer request totaling $25,006 as presented in the Finance Director's November 20th, 2025 memo pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 6.
Second?
thank you, Terry, thank you, George. This will be a roll call vote as well. Mona?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Scott is an aye. That motion passes as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, and I should add that most frequently, the reserve fund gets used to close our deficit in snow and ice at the end of the fiscal year. So that's, I should say, I'll add on to what I was saying about Mass General Law and how we can't exceed any appropriations. The only exception to that is snow and ice expenses within the DPW. So at the end of the year, this town has been responsible in closing the gap, so we're not carrying forward the deficit in snow and ice and raising that on taxpayers in the next year. So typically, more often than not, the reserve fund gets used to close the gap for snow and ice. So right now, we have no snow and ice expenses so
Yeah.
far.
Well, just remind Scott that we are hardy New Englanders, and he doesn't have to go out if it's just a drizzle.
We'll do.
That's great. Next item then is our financial updates. So Jason, keep going on that.
Yeah, thanks. So I've been, there's nothing new in this packet tonight. The most, so I'll start with the FY26 tax recap update and budget update. At the The town held its classification hearing on November 17th, and the purpose of the classification hearing is to decide whether we're going to split the tax rate into either have a single rate for, the same rate for commercial, industrial, personal property, and residential. That classification was held, and after that vote is taken by the select board, we send a bunch of paperwork to the state where they certify our tax rate. That has since happened, so that's an update since then. The rate that was certified was the rate that's mentioned in the memo. So there was some minor changes that happened between town meeting and now, and this memo that's in the packet lays out those changes. So if there's any questions about 26, I didn't want to spend a ton of time talking about that process.
Don't see any questions, and Jeff looks like he's okay, so.
Yeah, and again, the important part of getting past that process is that's typically seen as the original budget for FY '26. So that's the baseline that we start from when we're working on '27.
Okay. You did mention in it of, when we met, the last time we met talking about the future, we asked all the departments for a level funded and a level service budget. And in this, I'm reading that you'd said, okay, for going forward now, it's like, we can't kind of have said, try and live within a 2.9% increase.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So we
moving on
should
to-
see,
yeah, the
when
27
we
budget,
visit
yeah.
with the departments, we should see, here's, are they going to present, here's what I want for level service, here's what I would do for the 2.9% increase, and here's what I would have to cut or I'd have to trim, or here's how I would hit 2.9%. Okay,
Correct, yes.
all right.
Yeah, so we haven't sent out formal budget instructions yet, but that's going to be the
Okay.
message to folks. And, we're hearing the school budget developing as we speak.
I saw that in the paper.
And so for us to be able to have a balanced budget without an override, it would be 2.9%, and I think-
Overall.
Overall, yeah.
Right.
For the education assessments and the town budget requests.
Yeah, there were some in the article, it was in the Advocate, there were some incredibly large increases in some of the numbers, like from 50,000 to 500,000.
Yeah.
Would love to see more data on how that big a jump happened, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of discussion
Okay.
about these numbers. One of the ones, my favorite, is health insurance. We've moved on to the 27
Yeah,
budget.
let's go
I'm
to
sorry.
27.
No, that's okay.
But actually, just in terms of the wrap-up of actually, I guess it's the wrap-up of 25. Are you going to talk about free cash in a bit? Should I hold off on free cash questions?
Oh, well, I mean, you can start with a question about free cash.
Because, we generated a lot of free cash, which is both good and bad. I'm good when it becomes that we over budgeted for operating expenses. It's the second year in a row, at least since I've been on the committee, that we've really overachieved pretty significantly the budgeted amounts for revenue. I was wondering if you could, speak to how it is that we might be able to provide some guidance as to coming up with a local receipts number that we can all get comfortable with. We don't want to be too high, but we don't want to be so low that we're just like taxing people at 10%, but we just generated $3 million of cash flow from missing revenue numbers, on the good side. It's the old, the old CFO in me says, I don't mind sandbagging sometimes, but and we didn't, but it's really hard. We just need to get more details, I think, about how you're creating some of that stuff. If maybe you could comment a little bit about how excise taxes jumped so much higher than what you had budgeted, as well as the investment income, because on the investment income side, the prior year, there was that unusual spike in interest rates where we were at zero, so we never budgeted for interest income. Then we had the spike up. The interest rates stayed the same, and we generated, 169% better than what we planned. So we must have a cash flow model. I just wonder if you could speak to that, and then perhaps we could have some dialogue as we go through the budget process. I know you have a higher number for '27 about local receipts. Is that high enough in terms of what? And I don't want to sink us and say we have to, we're going to, pie in the sky budgeting. But on the other hand, we're in a tight situation here. So I would just love for you to speak to that.
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm happy to talk a little bit about this. I don't have all the FY25 numbers in front of me tonight because I wasn't expecting to talk about them in detail, but I will say this. I mean, local receipts are really the only place where we generate any free cash from. That's where we have some discretion over the numbers. The 25 numbers, we did generate a record high of free cash by having $5.2 million being certified. Within that number, we had a prior year closeout of about $500,000. So there's a number of one-time things that generally happen when we set the local receipt budget. In the end, like when we see our actual results at the end of the year. One example would be the spike in investment income from the year before. We've increased our local receipts budget for investment income, and it makes me uncomfortable because we're hearing of Fed rate cuts and so forth. So we have a decent amount of money in the bank because we borrowed. We can't use that as a strategy to generate money from bonded receipts, but we have a decent amount of money. So we felt comfortable raising the local receipts budget between town meeting and now. That was one thing from the 26 memo where we, go back here. Got it. So we went to town meeting with a local receipt budget of $4.7 million. We increased another $300,000 to get to about $5.1 million for the final FY26 budget that got set. And then that was one of the mechanics of how we got to get back up to a 2.9% budget capacity to balance the budget. We increased local receipts further.
So as we go through the process and as we get to January, perhaps you could give us some more detail then about how you calculate it. I'd love to see the average cash
Sure.
balance and how you're calculating that and how much cushion you're applying. And I'd also, on the excise taxes, that if there was some one-time things in there, fine, but, the year-to-date actual was, $800,000 higher, and that's a lot of new cars.
Sorry, Terry, what are you looking at?
So on the memo dated October 6th, fiscal year 25 results, page 2, you.
Oh, okay, that's not in this week's packet, correct?
No, but
Okay.
we haven't had a meeting since then, so.
Oh, okay. Well, I probably should have had that in this packet then
That's
as
okay.
well.
So just, I'd like to, as we go through the process, we don't have to do it tonight, but some of those bigger numbers that created some favorable variances,
Mm-hmm.
I'd love some detail about that, and then how you're estimating what those numbers should be for our FY '27 budget. And Stephanie just jumped in. I don't want, because there was such a big favorable number, and favorable numbers are good, but when you're really tight, if you're being too favorable, or you're being, you're not budgeting close, you end up taxing people when you know you're gonna beat that number, and I just wanna make sure that we're very transparent about that, that's all.
Yeah.
So I leave it for another meeting,
Right,
but
so-
just make that as a note.
I would say this, but when we were setting the tax rate for '26, we did increase it fairly significantly for us. I mean, we usually put that on a slow trajectory of increasing it a small amount every year. We increase the budget and local receipts. We increased it fairly significantly, and I think overall it's been about another $500,000 that we've increased the budget for '27.
And part of it's timing and et cetera, but when you're going through the budget process, you're 3/4 of the way through the year, you kind of know. So I would just
Yeah, so-
we would like more detail.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and I would say this, when the state's looking at our numbers and we have to prove to them we're going to collect these numbers, so they'll set our tax rate.
Totally understand. I'm not trying to say that you should, budget for pie in the sky. On the other hand, if the budget was 4.4 and you did 6.9, there's something, we should have been closer, that's all. I mean, that's $2.9 million. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Which is good, but it's also not good.
Right.
Yeah, well, just the insurance.
Perception-wise.
alone is one
Perception-wise, managing what the tax rate is,
Portability-wise,
how much we're
right.
trying to figure out what to do with 2.5 overrides, the whole combination of stuff, it's just, it's something, and it adds into, when you look at what you're gonna do from a policy perspective about the utilization of cash flow, or of free cash, and we discussed this a little bit last year. I mean, I know the policy has always been, we only use 500,000 for operating expenses from free cash. And that's in the policy documents. And that policy document was written 15 years ago, when the operating budget was $50 million. But now the operating budget is $90 million. And I know you're going to tell me that it's because the financial advisors say that. They're just looking for an easy way not to have to explain anything when they go to finance Peasley School, if that ever happens. I just wonder if you should think about whether or not the policy should be stated with respect to a percentage of total, as our reserve funds are, as our debt ratios are, all as a percentage of total. Why is this one just 500,000? And I'm not a big fan of like using cash flow for, free cash flow for operating expenses.
Right.
But if we're gonna be generating this much, maybe it's something to look at in terms of that overall fiscal policy that was set 15 years ago. So I'll just let it for you guys to think about that. And so I guess those were my questions about the old numbers.
Yeah, so again, the part that you were mentioning about the financial advisors, that when we look to go for a bond rating and so forth, they look at use of free cash in your operating budget as being a structural deficit, because you're planning to spend more than you've structured your budget to take in.
All the more reason not to generate so much free cash then, too. So it cuts both ways, Jason. I would be interested if any of the other towns, what their policies are. Are they stated in terms of a fixed dollar amount, or are they stated in terms of a percentage? I find it hard that someone could argue that if you said it like, we're gonna take, 1% or 2% as the number, and that number therefore grows, I have a hard time figuring out how some financial guy is gonna argue that that's a structural deficit. It doesn't make sense to me, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's one element of the financial policies, and
Right, but the other thing that the financial folks will say is like, if you're trying to fund operations through a Prop 2.5 override, that's a structural deficit as well. So
Right.
you've got it from both sides. So I would just like some clarity as to what you guys are thinking from a fiscal policy perspective with respect to the use of free cash for operating expenses in any particular fiscal year.
Yeah. It's never a good thing to use free cash against your operating budget. It should be for one-time expenses.
I already said that.
Yeah.
But how much of it do you use that is a reasonable amount, considering how much you're generating? That's something else.
yeah, I was around when the financial policies were being developed and crafted. I mean, I had somewhat of a hand in it, but not. I wasn't the only one that was developing those
Well, I was on
those
appropriations
ideas.
when
but-
we started that
yeah.
whole process of doing all those, so I do have some
so-
perspective relative.
So you may remember the year that the town had, if you look back in the long range,
Yeah.
back into the history where the town, there's years where the 20-year history, there's years that the town had negative free cash, which means that we have to tax people to make up for deficits from the past. There was one year, and I think it was around when I first started, where the free cash was $470,000.
Yep.
So I think the thought was we will never go back to that era of that kind of
Well,
wild
if you
swing.
go back to $50 million operating budgets, I would agree with that. But
Right.
that day's gone,
Yeah.
and having, been in town for 40-something years, I know the history to it. I just think that from a a financial management perspective, it's something to consider as we try to mold our way through fiscal '27, '28, and '29, and get through this massive amount of taxation that we have to deal with. So, that's all. It's not a criticism of the old policy.
No, and I don't,
Good.
I
just wonder if you have to change it, that's all.
No, I don't feel any criticism to, let's be clear about that. But, yeah, so that was one of the things that was kind of debated when those decisions were being made around the free cash policy. When we were coming out of the dark time of having the year where $470,000 was certified for free cash, and the town had been frequently using over $1 million, when you're saying it's a much bigger scale problem, $1.1 million or so relation to a $50 million budget than $500,000 is to a $90 million budget.
Right.
So, again, as time and inflation has happened over those years, then, yeah, the $500,000 is less significant than it was 15 years ago. Yeah, so the point I was going to make was that policy was originally going to go further by reducing it $100,000 a year until it was zero, so we would have no structural deficit. So it stayed there because felt like it was too hard to get away from balancing to that extreme precision.
Of course, but we weren't generating free cash either. So now we're generating, 3.9 million a year. It's just a whole different world. I think that to take a look at it with fresh eyes and a fresh perspective of what other towns may do, what some other financial advisors may suggest, is certainly worth it. I'm not an advocate for spending, $2 million in free cash to take care of operating expenses by any means. But if we need to tweak it a little bit in order to help us get through some of the issues that we have, I think it's something worth exploring.
Yeah, and we are looking at, the stabilization funds, reducing OPEB, so those are absolutely, on the chopping block, we'll see. We just need to evaluate the true number of what it's going to be and then calculate, I guess, the most cautious way of getting us there without cutting off our own foot at the
Totally
same
agree.
time.
Just
Yeah.
offer this up as things to look at.
Those are
Yes.
very constructive comments, so we appreciate
Thank you.
hearing a view on the policies.
So let's use this, this topic of free cash just to finish up that part of the story based on the latest meetings we've had. So that 5.3 kind of came forward as certified free cash, right? And then applying the policies that allocated on the order of 3.8.
Yeah, so.
Capital planning?
So if we're going back to the '27 budget now, so talking about crafting that, within the financial policies, it calls for annually, we'll develop a free cash plan. Once we know what the under the free cash policy, we'll annually have a free cash plan. That was presented to the select board, which they voted to support with the exception of the $200,000 contribution to stabilization. So instead of 500, we'll have 700 left over within the free cash plan. So if you look through this memo, it shows a free cash plan. The difference
I'm sorry,
is,
could you just clarify that? The select board said we're not going to put the 200,000 to the stabilization fund this year?
correct, yes. Yeah, so we'll have 700,000 left over in free cash. So our reserves are made up of stabilization and free cash. So you add those two numbers together, and then we take that as a proportion of the annual budget to see where we're funded with our reserves. And so our policies call for the reserves being 5 to 10% and maintaining a balance of that. We've typically, and it's been, every year it's been the same kind of percentage, the neighborhood that we're in is generally, once we get our free cash number, before any of it has been dedicated to a free cash plan and gone to town meeting and voted as being part of capital articles and so forth, it's been 12% or slightly higher than that. And then to bring it back down to the policy level between 5 and 10%, it's been spent down to 8% generally. So this plan was similar to that in prior years, so we've maintained kind of a status quo with that approach.
was curious why they didn't want 200,000 going to stabilization. Was there, I missed the meeting, so, but,
Well, I mean, I think it was because of, to leave more in the reserves readily available due to and maybe carry over to the next year.
Yeah, because what action is needed to tap into stabilization fund money?
Oh, it's just a procedural, you know, it's really the same process. It would be an appropriation at town meeting. You know, both of these pots of money can't be accessed without a town meeting vote. So it's just a higher level, threshold level of vote that would be required. Stabilization takes 2/3 vote, and the free cash would be a majority vote.
Yeah, so it's a little easier to get to or use for operations, I guess.
Yeah, so they're both reserves.
that makes me
Do you
more
want to,
nervous
do
than
you
the
want to
other
comment on
problem.
that?
Question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Just do the intro. with-
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Jacob Jones, 106 Green Street, here as a liaison for the Select Board. Great question, and maybe in retrospect, I'm wishing we would have, instead of putting it at the bottom of the line, which pushes it towards next year, is if we would have put it to the top of the line, which is operating budget for this year, instead of 500 to 700, which is kind of what the sentiment I'm feeling. So I guess my question, I mean, that was the policy vote that we took at our most recent meeting, but my question for the chair is, if this board would like to have the select board readdress that and move the 200 from pushing to next year to pushing to this year's operating budget from 500 to 700, because that was on the table of options for me, but it was hard enough for me to just explain my reasoning why I thought our reserves were being overfunded, which I won't go into, but like based on feedback from the auditors, based on, I wasn't planning to systemically not have that in there, but like particularly based on the needs right now, it looked to me like our reserves were overfunded, on the overfunded side maybe, and that I was hoping we could find even more money to give relief to the taxpayers. But I was told that we had the $500,000 policy, but I would like, if the chair wants, me to take something back to the board about possibly reallocating the operating budget from 500 to 700. I would certainly be happy to take that back to
Kind of
them.
the difference between applying that 200 to current budget rather than 27. What do you think on that, Terry?
I think we need to see it overall, in overall context first.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea, but we need to see it in context, where we all kind of shake out. Because we also, I mean, the other piece of reserve funds are the safer reserve fund that the town didn't approve. Should it go back to town meeting with more information and a better presentation as to how to do it? There's a whole bunch of different moving parts to all of this that I think are appropriate. And so, you know, I would encourage the administration to kind of take a look at that, you know, that fixed dollar amount, compare it to other towns, give some thoughts on what we do with that. You know, nothing gets, you know, whether it's the 200s, it's a nice policy by the select board, but ultimately it's at town meeting that it all gets taken care of. So you guys can recommend whatever, we can recommend whatever, but it's how town meeting ultimately perceives that. So I think that's part of the working process of just the whole, you know, the month of December and January to kind of get our hands around things a little bit better, frankly.
Right.
But it's an excellent thought.
Excellent. Okay. And I'll work, I'm
right, so-
making these actions as they come.
So from the free cash plan that the select board voted previously, the important step there is knowing how much money we have from free cash to apply toward the capital plan. And that's the last piece of information that I included in the packet for tonight, was the draft of the capital plan and the requests that have come in for this year. Right now, as it stands, there's something like $9.5 million that was, within the capital plan. Of the 5.25, $3.9 million was approved to be used toward the capital plan. So I think the overall requests, which are being heard by financial planning, that have come in, $9.5 million would be funded by the general fund. Taking that off the top, we have a $5.5 million funding gap between whether that be funded with debt or just foregone, you know.
Those projects not move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So again, that's one of the important things about generating the free cash, is we've typically used the free cash toward funding the capital plan.
Right.
And it hasn't been, you know, and Terry, like, to go back to and I'm not taking any criticism over the local receipts, but the local receipts, we're happy to have an achievable budget in the fall because the tax rate's being set and the state won't let us set a tax rate with those being too aggressive. And if we don't meet those budgets, it'll be a revenue deficit. My time here, obviously, you know, I'm saying we always do better because we budget conservatively.
Yep.
So the risk would be, and again, the risk is, there's two parts to the risk. The risk of going too high on the local receipts budget would be not just not generating free cash for the capital plan in the future or other one-time expenses, or making that 500 or 700 or whatever the amount that we need for the operating budget would be. The risk would be we'd have to go back to a town meeting and cut, since we're close to the levy capacity now. Like, this is something that can be adjusted. We could bring down the tax rate a little bit. When we went through the 26 process, when we saw that the single-family homes values increased more than we had projected, that we projected 5%, they went up 6.3%. It was a little bit of a relief valve to bring the tax rate back down a little bit. Then, when we were crafting the 27 budget model to begin with, we went there to bring, we projected at the summit hearing a 4% increase for health insurance, because how could health insurance go up again after an 18%? You know, we've had years and years of under 3% increases. And we had 1 year, 18% last year. So at the summit, we had no idea. We took a guess, 4%, you know, higher than our typical 10-year average of 2.9%. We're hearing from our consultants, 12% is the market trend now on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working with some aggressive consultants now
Yeah.
that are telling us to budget 12%.
Yes.
So that increased in the model from the 4% that we used. So that was another $600,000 or so to the model. So that's to get back up to close to 3% like we presented at the meeting. We increased local receipts through that process as well. So we have increased them significantly from what we presented at town meeting to the 26 budget, and then again to the 27 budgets. We have started
Yes,
increasing them.
Absolutely, I agree with that. You have done that. I could see it in the numbers, et cetera. It's just that the number last year was so big.
Well, that was the 1 million, right, for the health insurance?
No, I'm talking about the local receipts.
Oh, the local receipts, yes. Okay.
I understand all the health insurance, I
Yeah,
understand
yeah,
all
yeah.
the expenses
I
and
thought you
stuff
meant
like
the
that.
overall number. Okay.
I'm just trying to look at the overall, from a structural perspective
Mm-hmm.
of, you need cushion in the budget, absolutely. You just do. I get that, it's just,
How big a
how
cushion?
big is the cushion, and, how much, insight could we offer with respect to that, that's all. So,
Yeah, and I'm hearing it would be helpful to bring forward some
Yeah.
more detailed information on the local receipts and what makes up them.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
the biggest source within it is motor vehicle excise. Again, this is a challenge. We're trying to work on a budget 18 months before we're going to see the actual results. Motor vehicle excise is biggest piece within the local receipts. It's, 3.5 million of the total.
yep,
We typically are pretty conservative with that because we don't know, like, we're hearing, the vehicle availability, the depreciation schedule for motor vehicles is pretty quick. So when us meeting that number relies on people buying new cars and paying that excise tax bill.
just want to see the basic assumptions that you're using to get to the number, that's all. Convince me that it's reasonable, that's all, and it's conservative.
No, and I'm happy to bring that back.
So that'd be great.
Bring some more
That's all.
detail back.
That's great.
Go ahead, Jason.
Mr. Chair, Jacob Jones again. On that point, just for the committee's information, the Board of Selectmen did in the past couple of months increase, basically across the board, all user fees for the town. The biggest line item that maybe we can get more detail on, because I agree with the questions you're asking, is the building office fees, which were very old. I always hate increasing fees, but the argument was made, and it was persuasive, that our fees are way too outdated. And based on peer studies and things, we did revise the fees. In some cases, those fees are double what they were. So in addition to the comments you're making, there's actually been an increase in the fees themselves, which is only a fraction of the number you're talking about. Doesn't affect the excise, but just the user fees.
Great.
Yeah, which would, you know, the action of actually having a vote taken to improve, to increase the building permit fees, we did increase the budget for
Yep.
building permits.
Yep, good, okay.
So Jason, keep going then on then what's lining up for the budget instructions to the departments for
Oh, okay.
27.
So again, we were going to lay out the instructions of produce a 2.9% budget from town departments, no more than 2.9%. And then explain to us if your level service budget would be more than 2.9%, explain it, and you have to enunciate through your submission what would have to be cut to make that number. And I should add, one of the complications this year in terms of getting into the weeds and the details was the collective bargaining. Our biggest expense within the town budget or any of the town and school budgets is personnel. All 5 of the town's unions were expired when we were doing the 26 budget. Since then, 4 out of 5 have settled for 26. There's still one that's outstanding, and it's going to continue to be challenging within
How did those,
doing some of
happen?
these.
Remember, we couldn't budget in the different departments, so we had to do it in the admin.
Yep.
How
Right.
do you think we're gonna come out relative to what we budgeted from,
I mean, I think we're going to meet the number that we appropriate, and there may be a little bit of surplus within that, not anything to,
Yeah, and we have to
write
be
home about.
conservative with that number too, because you just don't know, you know?
that's why I asked the
Yep.
question.
Yeah,
I'm more happy if you miss if you're over budget for expenses and come in under that.
Right,
Then,
yeah.
you know, not saying we're gonna get revenue and then blow that number away.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at on that kind of
Yeah.
thing, just, but, okay.
Yeah, so again, it's guaranteed that we're going to generate some free cash.
Of course,
because
you have-
it's-
should.
The law is that we can't spend more than the appropriations.
Right.
So you're only going to have turnbacks.
Right.
At the end of the year. You're not going to have unfunded deficits,
Right.
well, except for public works and snow and ice. But we generally cover that, so that doesn't have to be raised on, there's a special provision for how that works. It gets raised in taxes in the next year if we don't provide for it within the current year. So anyway, we're definitely going to generate some free cash. It could be a very small number, it could be a larger number if we're very overly conservative with the local receipts. And then we're talking about them now, so I'm happy to bring
Great.
it back and
Perfect.
tell you what we're thinking.
Thanks.
So then how does that 2.9, kind of setting that level, what's that then look when you model that out and remaining levy capacity and all that?
That uses up the levy capacity for 27.
And so you've got the
excess
kind of the
levy
bolded
capacity.
sentence there about an increase over 2.9.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, so the highlighted part of that is if budgets are going to come in greater than 2.9%, using the projections that we have, would require an override. And so, again, the precision of having to calculate these numbers, it's a little bit more of a challenging exercise this year
Yes,
because
I agree.
things like debt and things like the health insurance,
Sure,
for
no,
example.
no question. A quick question, though. You give departments instruction to come up with a 2.9% increase. Are all departments valued the same? I mean, I just wonder if, if the police department needs 5% or, how are you going to handle all that in terms of keeping it within overall? So I think the overall scope would be that you're going to say, the town itself, the town budget total is 2.9%. I might have some more, I might have some, that have to
Yeah.
cut. I just don't think, when I read this and I hear that, we told them all to do a 2.9% increase, that means we're painting everybody with the same level of priority. And not every department has the same priority level in terms of what is needed for the town as a whole. So as we enter into the discussions with all the departments, I would just kind of keep that in mind in terms of the types of questions that appropriations may ask, or at least I might ask in terms of like, and especially of you, Stephanie, it's like, all employees are valuable, but
Well, when it
some are
gets-
more valuable than others.
So we deal with that when we're going through the separate budgets, and you have, of course, like a DPW department, right? They have fleet, they have, different divisions, and then you have assessors. So you have, your field person, you have the person that does the interior work, you have the head assessor, they have, CAMA, they have their software. So it's so lean, it would end up that a person would get cut. So then if we had to cut the field person, then they don't keep up with the valuations in town. So I get it, and trust me, we have thought of that, like, okay, well, we can't take, that percentage away from already almost crippled department that they're doing whatever they can with. But then you go to a smaller department like assessors, and you can say the same thing because they're so lean. So it's just,
And then again, of course, it'll play into what you end up recommending for what you're going to put on the override.
right, yeah.
Budget, and
So-
from that point, and from that standpoint, it's, you have to be kind of, now, that's a whole different discussion,
Well, all of that's gonna come out in the
strategy of-
wash anyway. I mean, if we get to the 2.9% and they're gonna have to cut to get to level service, you're gonna see where they're gonna have to cut. And is it worth it to the taxpayers to lose that resource? Is it not?
Yeah.
This is the
well, the question is, which
unfortunate-
resources would you put out there, that's all.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
different towns have taken different strategies, and that's not our job here in terms of that.
Right, yeah.
But as a taxpayer, when we make recommendations to town meeting, we'll all have an opinion relative to that.
Yeah, so I think the point was that we would stay within that total. There may be some nuances as we go through the process. There may be some trade-offs that happen. And, an example, like Steph just mentioned, Department of Public Works, maybe parks as part of the Public Works budget will be less than 2.9%, whereas, construction and maintenance might be more. I'm just bringing that up as an example because I
Examples,
haven't looked
absolutely.
at it. But the point was to have an overall target that we need to get the budget to.
Okay.
Through,
That's what I wanted to make sure, because the way the instructions are, it's like, do your 2.9% and everything's good. It's like, well, maybe not, so.
Yeah, and they're aware of that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And the other thing to keep in mind is when we did this earlier, we went through and we asked them for level service and level funded. And if level funded, what would need to be cut? So for every department, we have an idea of.
We do.
And that level funded is basically a 0% increase.
Right.
correct.
Right, so we have an idea, and again, there may be some, if we're really trying to do the best we can for the taxpayers, there may be some things we're gonna have to make some tough decisions on, what do we do, what do we not do, to stay within that kind of thing. Because I think the thing we gotta keep in mind is, just like we're doing this and we're managing a budget, we have taxpayers who are managing food, cost of housing, their medical care, their child care, and taxes. And what, they're doing the same thing. If taxes are going up this much, what do I take it out of to balance my budget? So I just think we have to keep that in mind, that they're at the end of the road here.
And 2.5s never go well.
No, nobody wants them.
Yeah.
Is there anything more you want to cover on the 27 budget, Jason?
No, just did some projections of the tax impact that would be related to, if it was the high end of what was currently being projected with the schools and a Proposition 2.5 override were approved, what that potentially would look like to a projected tax bill.
Yeah.
And the detailed budget model that we're currently working with, included in the back. And the things that are highlighted in yellow are the things that have kind of changed through the models. And that's the point of, those are the highlighted
Yeah.
numbers that we're working with.
Well, I certainly appreciate you giving us the big picture in terms of calculations of where you are, looking at the levy limit and stuff. I know last year you had a whole bunch of different stuff going on, and it took us a while before we got to that. This is very helpful.
Yeah.
And, thank you.
And that works well for me too, Jason, and that you put the two columns together. So we've got the 2.9 and then the level funded. So that's good to see those comparisons side by side. All right. Any other budget questions before we entertain questions on capital plan, if there are any?
Was there any thought, Stephanie, about recommending reserve for the SAFER grants again, or are we just going to say no?
It has been brought up. The fire department, of course, has asked, whether or not that can be a warrant article. And, I just said it'll be in part of the discussions. I'm not sure yet.
It was laid out, it failed at town meeting. We talked about it a lot. There's a lot of needs within the capital plan that are being talked about, including the departments that would be benefiting from the savings. We just didn't feel like there was support for it, and then within the capital plan, nobody turned us in the other direction. It was well disclosed that item was not in the free cash plan for the year. We can change course, but it would be taking resources from someplace else.
It's always the way it is, but yeah.
Yep.
All right, so thanks for the update on the capital plan that's going through the Financial Planning Committee right now. They're asking the questions of departments and asking great questions about priorities and which projects, if we do need to defer something, which ones would be, higher priority might be deferred. So that team is doing a good job in reviewing those. That'll make our review easier to see the end result of how they rack and stack those
Yeah.
requests.
And all the packets are always online. Jason puts them online. So if you ever want to see any slideshows that they have or anything like that.
Yeah, so my goal is everything that we discuss here and show it in our packets, these printed packets that we produce, I'll put them out online on the town's webpage, so they're available for anybody to look at.
Yeah, so under financial planning, it'll say meeting packet, and you can just click on it. The date will be there, and yeah.
That works well.
Yes.
And so, moving on, I just talk
Yeah.
about the capital plan a little bit.
Yeah.
The last financial planning meeting, the schools presented their capital plan. We funded a feasibility study or design money for the Z School roof. That's the biggest project within their request. They're contemplating an $8 million roof project at Z School, and details will get released because they all weren't available at the time of that meeting. It's going to be an MSBA-funded project under a rapid, accelerated repair program is what it's called, where we will get approximately 50% reimbursement from them on that. Again, people are asking, well, $8 million, it's jaw-dropping for a roof. So I think there'll be a lot of discussion about that. It's a large enough project in scope that one consideration could be whether we do that as a debt excluded project or not, put that on the ballot. If there's going to be an override election and a Proposition 2.5 override election that involves a ballot question, it could be timely to have a debt exclusion as well for that, especially considering that as the Peaslee School project unfolds, that the estimate for the scope of that project is somewhere between $40 and $120 million for the overall cost. And
It's a big range.
Yeah, I know, right? Right.
I say that because it's
I
kind of
go, who are we
ironic, but
kidding? You know it's
it's,
going to be towards the 120.
yeah. But, I mean, comparing and contrasting, the most recent school project in Southborough was, I believe, is 110 million or somewhere in that neighborhood for the Neary School, the
Right, but it
elementary
didn't get
school.
approved.
It did not get approved, correct.
Right.
And so,
I think as you go through that, it's, you know, the roof and the debt exclusion on a project like that, that makes a lot of sense. So it's
Significant
it's
project like
significant,
that.
it's, yeah, it's, no amount of free cash is gonna help with that, just
correct.
borrow it
yeah.
and exclude it.
Yeah.
So,
It's hard to argue with, that little Joey in third grade is getting dripped on, so as long as you come up with a reasonable plan of numbers, it's pretty sure bet, but.
yeah, I'm sure, but I'm sure that's going to be the item that has the most amount of discussion around it from the capital plan. And like I said, there's a summary at the end of this memo from, on the 27 budget. There's, toward the end of this packet, it shows a total of $15.6 million for FY '27 being submitted. Some of those projects would be funded by the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund. Some of them would be funded by CPA, so forth. So we did a number of subtractions to get down to what the general fund would generally be responsible for. That's 9.3 million if you do those adjustments. You know, so we subtract out the enterprise funds, what would be paid from, nothing this year, but typically we buy ambulances from the ambulance revolving fund, out from ambulance revolving fund. The high schools pay-as-you-go capital, typically that's within the operating assessment. So that's subtracted from the capital plan to be considered from free cash. We're assuming that the Blake Street project, when that comes back, whether it comes back, would be paid from CPA. There's a Parks project that's assumed to come from CPA if that moves forward. And then we have a number in here, like a big blanket number to assume MSBA reimbursement for the Z roof. And then the balance of that, you apply free cash to that, the 3.9 million, leaves 5.4 million. So if we were going to be borrowing $4 million for the Z school, we have a somewhat tangible capital plan for 27 if we can cut $1.5 million out of it. So either borrow another $1.5 million, which is not likely to gain a lot of support, the idea of borrowing more, given the big numbers of some of these capital projects that we're looking at issuing debt for in the future.
Gotcha. That's right there on that last page, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would be good, see the schools to get some clarity on the range, because that makes a big decision, big number relative to what you want to do with some of
Right.
the general
Yeah,
stuff,
Yeah.
right? And, you know, I don't know.
So I'm kind of half kidding about it.
I find it hard to
but yeah.
believe that they'll get a $120 million building through, but I've been wrong before.
So that, the scope of that project, the feasibility is wider than most elementary school feasibility projects, because there's a discussion of the grade reallocation and whether they renovate the existing structure or if there's another building built on the property. There's a lot of options being looked at, and I think that's why the range is so wide like that.
Okay, that's good to hear,
Until those
because
scenarios.
that's because the only number that's really been floated out there was 120 before, and that
Right.
was
Yeah.
like, I don't think so.
Well,
So, just from a discussion among fellow taxpayers, and consensus, et cetera. So, as we go through, I think if, Scott, if you make sure when the schools come that they kind of talk about that a little bit, even though it's not in this year's plan, but it does impact how
Yeah.
Jason might go about funding some stuff.
Yeah, so typically we want to look at we're conservative, so we have plugged in. I think at the summit, we used a number of 100 million.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that sense was revised upward to, the top end got revised upward to 120.
And I understand why you do that, it's just now that we're getting like, feet to the fire in terms of what
Right.
it means for your fiscal year '27, borrowing needs and debt exclusions, it's more important that we kind of, get some more clarity about what are their options. They don't have, obviously, they're not going to make a decision, but give us some clarity as to the
Yeah.
probabilities of different
Right.
elements.
I can't recall the feasibility study's schedule and if there's any decision points where they would reduce the options down to continue their design.
Yeah, I think we'll continue discussing at the meetings. I attend
Yeah, so
their building committee.
I'm going to
meetings.
watch on those and see if there's opportunities that they've made some decisions that reduce the range so that we've got better information to plan for.
I mean,
Right.
I think it's 2028 when it would be considered. So,
But if
the,
if they happen to reject any of those scenarios, such that it's now 80 to 120 instead of 40 to 120.
Yeah, I mean, because I think it's important, because if, whatever you need to borrow from a capital expenditure perspective, obviously, you're forecasting out, what do I need to borrow in '28 or '29, and maintain our, the debt coverage ratios that we
policy, yeah.
want, right? So it impacts what you do today, and then how much you're gonna use for reserves to fund different stuff, and maybe if that's the number is smaller later, then you borrow more of the capital. We don't normally borrow for capital, but given that you've got a 2.5 override problem, maybe you do, and there's just different ways to play it and stuff, so, to just, to leave it hanging out there that, well, it could be $120 million, that doesn't work, folks. I mean, you gotta kind of start narrowing stuff down here a little bit.
Yeah, and we're getting closer.
Okay.
We have, of course, the OPM, we're hiring the design.
the designer's been chosen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
It's
not
really
that, not
early
that
in
everybody
that.
should be
Yeah, it's
too
pretty-
scared of the 120. I mean, that would be net of MSBA reimbursement. I
Right.
mean, that wouldn't be a viable project without, close to a 50% reimbursement rate. So we're going to be modeling that about.
60 million is,
Yeah, that would be still be the biggest project in town that the town's ever done, but
right.
that's the nature of capital projects in building, is that the next one is the biggest one ever.
Right.
So,
And then Melican is right behind that.
Well, that's why it's.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
need to line
That's why
those
the-
all up.
Yeah, so that's why they should be looking at how they can, well, we should leave that for later. I'm not an expert in that.
Any other finance updates, Jason?
that's the extent of where we are right now, so.
Great. And then other comments or questions of Jason on finance? So Steph, we'll circle back to the agenda item. If there's any updates you can share around White Cliffs and the plan there.
Oh, yeah, so White Cliffs, a lot of people have asked me, is there gonna be a separate special town meeting? Everything's so fluid now that, I would say it might even be spring town meeting, our annual town meeting. They're very aggressive. They've been meeting, just today, they were out with 2 more contractors. So what they're doing is getting all of their costs. At the same time, we're trying to work with preservationists. The tax credits have been kind of put back on the table, so they might be interested in doing the historic tax credits. So they've been working with environmental companies. They've done testing so far. So they're waiting for the report with all the numbers. Of course, we started out with a lease position, and now we're in a to-purchase position. Who knows? It could be hybrid. It could be back to a lease and purchase, closer to 5 years. It's very fluid, but they want to make it work, and the town wants to make it work. And everything has been positive conversation, but that's why I'm just taking it as it comes. They keep me updated. I just had Rich from Elegant Banquets in my office today. We had a nice long meeting, discussing the steps. I'm going to have another meeting with them Friday to see where they're at. Hopefully, they'll get more numbers in, and, we can work from there. But they've already worked with their banks. They have everything lined up, all of the questions answered, but it's just, what is the best way for the town and for Elegant Banquets to, what arrangement we're going to have.
Did you ever go back to the other people that put a bid in?
No,
Why?
no, we awarded the bid to somebody, so we can't just,
There was no timeline on it?
not unless it wasn't in good faith, and it's 100% in good faith.
Okay.
Yeah.
The way I understand it is that it's not just discussions that are happening, is that there's real experts doing due diligence on different specialty areas, whether it's renovation or remediation.
Oh, they're all, like, the
And-
architects have the
Right,
historic
and
background. Yeah.
that's giving both us an understanding of what needs to be done, but more importantly, gives Elegant Banquets a better understanding of what needs to be done in
Absolutely.
the construction. And I think overall, if we can work towards a sales agreement rather than lease, it simplifies
It does.
the
Yep.
relationship as well. And so
Absolutely.
it's a positive. It's taking longer to get to a transfer, but I think it's going in the right direction, and it's starting
Oh,
to
yeah.
bring back some of the better talk on the way the historical preservation might work and some of the remediation would work on some of the materials that are on the
Right,
property.
which
So
is huge. That's
everybody's learning a lot of good, solid information that's going to allow them to get the finances they need and to
Right.
complete the transaction.
Yep.
If I understand it right.
Yep, absolutely.
Have the zoning issues been worked out? I remember there was,
Yeah, so, yes, they did work out fine. They were able to do a special use zone,
Okay.
and, yeah, so
all right,
that has been,
that's tabled, that's done.
yes.
It's,
Okay.
it's ready to go whenever town
Yes.
meeting occurs, right?
Absolutely, and both parties were happy with the outcome, so, but we just had to make sure legally, so we didn't get to the town meeting floor and have somebody appeal it and say, that's not legal, da-da-da, and it was going back and forth for a little bit, but I think both sides are happy now, and,
Okay.
yeah, so that's, yeah, little by little, we're getting there. It might take some time, but of course, as you know, it's a building that is unique. It's a historic mansion, and never mind the fact there's going to be a restriction on the property, so it kind of closes the options for the building that more. I really do believe we're working with the best people and the best venue that we can for that type of use.
And with the delay, there hasn't been any significant, we didn't have another chimney fall down. We didn't have other things happen that's increased
No,
our
they actually just had
support
a
costs.
mason out there, and there are things that need to be restructured, but that's,
But we haven't incurred
We haven't
a lot
incurred
of
more
additional
expense.
operational costs.
no,
and
no, no.
Maintenance
No,
costs and all that.
absolutely not, no.
Okay.
Yeah, the building has had a lot of activity, which is good, airing it out. so.
It's probably been better for it.
But
there's-
that's what I
that
mean.
people are going in
Right,
and out of it, and
right.
it's getting
Opening
opened
the
up.
doors, getting
Yeah.
fresh air in there, yep, yep. So,
Excellent. Okay, thanks for that.
you're welcome.
Final then item would be to begin to lay out what our schedule might be, just prior to the meeting and looking at what's already scheduled for December. And we typically have our Tuesday nights that we do. There's some other meetings that town administration's at. We've got financial planning that'll, solidify that capital plan. So it looks like our meetings would start up right after the first of the year. And Jason and I were able to talk a little bit earlier today of how that might lay out. We didn't get far enough to know what our must be, like a report needs to be submitted in time for town meeting, so we'll get that date and begin to lay out dates in January and February to meet that.
Yeah, generally, we need to be done with the budget at the end of March because of the hearing that's called for in the charter. I don't have the exact date on the calendar yet. We're going to work on developing that, and then we'll probably lay out a calendar for financial planning and appropriations and see how those lay out against each other. So yeah, moving toward town meeting, which will be the last, the fourth Monday in April, I think is how the charter reads. So backing into the hearing that's required by the charter, that's
2
a
weeks.
certain number of days before
Yeah.
I think it's like about 4 weeks, you have to do that. I forget the number, it's the number of days, I think.
Yeah, I think it's 2 weeks after
th-
the,
Yeah, again, I don't remember all of
So
those.
we didn't get a
those
chance to lay that out.
milestones, but.
In that note I sent to Jason, and I think you probably caught it, is I laid out probably in terms of department size, department budget amount size, an order that would give us, like the more complex departments, let's talk to them first, get that information earlier, and then if there's questions that we need to return back to them, we've got some time at the end of the schedule. So it's not like, oh, let's hear from parks, at the very beginning. So I laid that out pretty much: schools, public safety, both police and fire, public works, and then finance department and other debt-related, finance-related items. And then I didn't go much deeper than that. And so if as we get started and there's a particular department that we think there's complexity in their budget, or that discussion about maybe somebody should be a lot less than 2.9 to give someone to go above 2.9, then let me know and we'll work that in.
Do the schools have a schedule for when they're going to, the school board would,
Yeah, and I didn't get a chance to fold
That's- yeah,
into,
that's the
yeah, of
biggest.
course, we want to talk to them after they've gone through and had their vote from
and as soon as
the
possible, yeah.
Yeah, they-
associated committees.
Yeah, they generally have a lot of iterations to their
I know they
budget
do.
as
And
they
that's why
go through
when
it.
you showed me that number, it's like, okay, that's.
But at this time of year,
Yeah,
this is what
always
they're
the way.
at,
Yep,
and then
yep,
they continue to
yep,
work on
yep.
that.
Yeah, I mean, it may be harder because of inflationary factors this year, but like you said, is there an appetite to see every department? I know the schedule's gotten a little fraught the past couple of years because I believe every department came before the board, maybe not last year, but the year before that. It was really stacked with a lot of meetings because of that.
I think with the kind of the latest format that we have with the budget information and the budget instructions that have gone to the departments, that I think there's a lot that we gain from just seeing
yeah, and that's what we
a
wanted.
particular
Yeah.
one that we say, okay, we got it covered. We might have some questions that
The 80-20
could be
rule.
fielded, but we don't have to go through that full presentation by the department.
And if any of you have questions, you can send them to Scott, and Scott reach out to any of our department heads. They
Well,
would
I'll funnel
prefer
them
that.
through,
Yeah,
town
well,
administrators.
Right, but they would prefer, having the questions ahead of time and they can gather
Absolutely, yes.
information. It's easier for you guys, so you have everything once they're here, but,
So that's why I'm hoping if we can lay out that schedule, then we
Yeah.
know, oh, 4 weeks from now, we're gonna be talking to library. So let's get
Right,
all our library questions to Jen beforehand, that type. We'll try to
Right.
get it organized that way, be fairly efficient. All right. Any other business to come before the committee? All right.
Mr. Moderator, I move we adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second to that? Thank you, George. And this will be our last roll call vote of the meeting. Mona? Yeah, you got it, yeah. That's the, Terry?
Oh, she wants to stay.
George?
Aye.
And Jeff? Aye. And I am also an aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, friends. I appreciate the discussion tonight and your work. And thanks,
Thanks.
Jason, for putting
Oh,
all this
thanks.
together.